Senator Bill Hagerty joins us now out of Tennessee. Big tech is a big part of his about his focus. But first, Senator, thanks for joining us.
It's great to be back with you, Brian. Thank you.
So, Senator, I want to get to big tech. Obviously, there's no hotter topic or more newsworthy topic in the country. But what did you think of President Biden's speech? What did you get for the 64 minutes?
Well, I was there in the chamber, locked down. It really was a bad visual. And I watched it open up as President Biden took credit for a rebound in our economy. And I'm sitting there thinking it's only possible because of the policies that President Trump put in place in Operation Warp Speed. But again, he took credit for somebody else's work. We've heard this before from President Biden, going all the way back to his days in school. That's plagiarism by any other term. But it was just then a litany of one crisis after the other. Yet he didn't talk about the border crisis, which is the biggest crisis we face right now, till the very end of his speech. And he said, well, if we believe that's a crisis, then we're going to have to vote for his bill for amnesty. I mean, it was just pathetic. And he billed this as a blue-collar blueprint. What it was a blue-collar jobs killer.
First, I want to bring you to immigration. You just brought us to immigration. So here's what President Biden said about immigration. Cut 8.
For more than 30 years, politicians have talked about immigration reform, and we've done nothing about it. It's time to fix it. On day one of my presidency, I kept my commitment and sent a comprehensive immigration bill to the United States Congress. If you believe we need to secure the border, pass it, because it has a lot of money for high-tech border security. If you believe in a pathway to citizenship, pass it. It's over 11 million undocumented folks, the vast majority of here overstaying visas.
All right, it sounds like he was running out of gas there, but
yes.
Well, so why not pass it? It sounds great.
Listen, what this is going to do is create even more incentive for chaos at the border, because he's talking about amnesty. And he rolls right from that into his conversation about voting rights. So I think it's pretty clear. They're just trying to create a turnstile at the border. And as they process people as rapidly as they can and dump them into the interior of the United States, they're making every town a border town in America.
No question. He mentions, if you want border security, we have high-tech border money. What are you talking about? We've already paid for a wall to be built, a fence, whatever you want to call it, do whatever's politically possible for Joe Biden to do. Say the money's already there. We're paying people not to work. That's what happens when you break the contract. And the wall's been made. So if he was serious, he knows this issue backwards and forwards. Secure the border first, or Republicans are never going to pay attention, nor should they. I think it's encouraging that Senator Mark Kelly is pointing out the crisis at the border that the administration is ignoring. He knows he's not getting reelected unless they fix it for Arizona, correct?
That's absolutely right. And to see, President Biden talking in this manner, there's something called the Impoundment Act, Brian. What Biden has done is actually violated the Impoundment Act. Congress has already appropriated the funds for that wall to be built. It's not the executive branch's role to come in and undo that. I mean, we saw President Trump go through an impeachment trial because of just that thing regarding funds to the Ukraine. President Trump was accused of holding that up. Biden is holding up the funds to build that wall. We need it now more than ever. He's proving that. And instead, it's interesting, Mark Kelly's even acknowledging that in Arizona, because he will never get reelected if this crisis continues. But this is a crisis of Biden's own making, but I think there's a lot of intent to it, again, because he's trying to flood the nation and really change the shape of America. Senator,
there's another story that I think is a pretty big deal. Is if you look at Senator Warnock and shocking the world and winning by a couple of points in that election to get that seat for 2 more years, he's going to be up in 2022. Where's the Republican challenger? A lot of people wondering why Republicans don't see that as an opportunity to take back the Senate.
I think it's a huge opportunity to take the Senate back, and I know that Rick Scott. I was just thinking about Tim because the piece you just played. Tim, by the way, did a great job last night. But Senator Rick Scott has been working very hard to put the pieces in place to retake not only Georgia but several other seats, and we're going to have to put a full court press on in that state. Great candidates are possible. We just got to get them to come out and be ready to run against Warnock. I think Warnock is very vulnerable, and I think we ought to be able to win that seat back.
Do you think that Herschel Walker is a viable candidate?
I think he's polling great right now. I think if Herschel Walker decides to get into the race, he'd be formidable. I don't know what where his mind is today about that, but I know the polls say that he could be extremely, extremely formidable were he to run.
Senator, just to play into what you're talking about, you want to say goodbye to Section 230 that gives all these big tech companies protections they don't deserve. There's some perils with that, though. If they say they got to be sued, maybe they're not going to put in anything that could possibly get them sued, therefore not getting access to anybody that they deem dangerous. But having said that, The latest reason why I think you have to pass something is Donald Trump did an interview with Dan Bongino. Do you know they would not post that interview on YouTube? The former president of the United States, arguably the most famous person in the world?
It's amazing. They'll suppress the speech of the most important leader in America and one of the most famous people in the world, as you say, Brian. Yet they will continue to allow Ayatollah Khomeini to post on their networks how to death to Israel and how to go about doing it. They'll allow the New York Post article on Hunter Biden to be taken down. I mean, this is out of control, and it needs to be addressed, as you say, and that's why I introduced my 21st Century Free Speech Act to combat this censorship by big tech.
So tell me how it reads.
Well, what it does in the first instance is it eliminates Section 230. What it does is looks at these companies as what they are today. They are functioning like common carriers. We regulate telephone companies. We regulate, railroads. What we want to make certain of is that this modern-day public square becomes more accountable to the public and allows equal access to all Americans, a non-discriminatory access, and it prohibits these entities from censoring using their own political bias.
So I think the most egregious example is the Hunter Biden story. There's on no planet, on no era, is that not a story in America. And they decided to take it down. And if anyone tried to retweet it, they would their account would be suspended. And then they said, "Oops, I'm sorry, I apologize." But the election was over by the time they apologized. So for you, is that when the rubber hit the road?
Oh, that was just amazing. But I tell you, I spent in my prior job before coming to the United States Senate, I was United States Ambassador to Japan. And I dealt every day with China, what they were doing there. This is more something you would expect from the Chinese Communist Party suppressing their citizens than to be coming from Silicon Valley. So, indeed, I think that this has been the breaking point, the 2020 election and the involvement of these big tech companies in a way that really showed their political bias and their aggressiveness. This is something that the American public realizes, they appreciate, they want to see action taken, and I'm ready to do it.
So are you worried about taking away the protections that 230 allows will make them so cautious they'll decide that Republican speech is too dangerous to publish?
I think the best thing for them to do is step back and to allow the American people to decide what they want to learn. They also need the standards that they have today are extremely opaque. I think they make it up as they go along, depending on how the political winds shift. Again, I'm loath to look for regulation as the solution to anything, Brian. But when you have entities like these, private entities, evolve into what really has become the modern-day public square, they really do look like common carriers. Justice Thomas made this point clear in a recent opinion, and I was inspired by that opinion, and I thought, this is the right approach.
Senator Bill Hagerty with us. And Senator, just tell me who's on the bill with you. Have any Democrats expressed interest?
We have not put the bill forward to bring a lot of to bring other senators on. At this point, we've just introduced it. Democrats have privately expressed interest to me. We'll see if we'll be able to get them on the bill and really move it forward. But I think Democrats have the same concern that Republicans do. They know that the tide can turn as quickly as it does, and they'll wind up becoming the victim of censorship just as easily.
But there's almost no examples, including of LeBron James, who said, "You're next to a cop," of Democrats and liberals or Hollywood stars being suspended. Can you give me an example? There's no motivation for Democrats to help you with this.
They've certainly benefited from it so far. You're exactly right about that. And again, that shows the political bias that's rampant. But the danger is there. And I hope that I'll be able to persuade some of my Democrat colleagues to look beyond the immediate benefit that they have and to think about our nation and to think about what's best for America and to really preserve the First Amendment and the freedom of speech that we all say that we support, yet we see it trampled on every day by some of these big tech companies that decide to opaquely censor what we're saying.
Another example of what's happening in the global community. Facebook temporarily hid posts calling for the resignation of Indian Prime Minister Modi, marking the platform's latest foray into a series of controversial decisions affecting free speech in this country, but now beyond our borders. I mean, what the heck are they doing?
Well, I think what they're doing is building global awareness of the problem. And if they've got problems here in America, India is a much more populous country than America. I've had the benefit of meeting Prime Minister Modi. I know he's very popular in India, and there are folks that feel differently, though. And the ability to express your viewpoint, your opinion. I mean, India bills itself as democracy as well, and this cuts against democratic ideals in that nation just as it does here.
Senator, how close is Tennessee to opening?
We are almost back in business, Brian. I mean, what President Biden should have thought about last night, what he called a blue-collar blueprint really was a blue-collar jobs killer. He had to look at states like Tennessee. We've become extremely successful. I was part of that. I was the Commerce Secretary when we came out of the last recession. And what we've done is have low taxes, regulations that are actually friendly and conducive to business. We've created a climate in Tennessee that is positive for business. And what's happened? We've seen our jobs grow, our wages grow. We're one of the top-performing top-performing states in the nation. And people are moving from blue states to Tennessee because of that. Instead of talking about raising taxes on America and killing jobs, President Biden ought to look at examples like Tennessee and say that's the path. That's the blueprint that we need.
Can we drink without eating, and can I stand at a bar on Broadway in Nashville?
You absolutely can, Brian. You absolutely can.
Wow.
And I look forward to welcoming you back because we are open for business again in Tennessee.
I don't have to order food as of this week, but I'm allowed to. Am I allowed? Are we allowed to stand at a bar in New York? Do you know, Allison, Eric? No, then I'm going to have to go to Tennessee and stand.
You're going to have to come to Tennessee, and you're more than welcome.
Senator Hagerty, good luck. You got to get this thing passed, okay?
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate your help.
You got it. Senator Hagerty of Tennessee.